Hi there, I'm Perry Byrne and welcome to my new video series. This series is all about solutions and deployments. And in this series, I'm going to do a deep dive into how solutions are used in the Microsoft Power Platform and Dynamics 365 for customer engagement first-party applications. That's quite a mouthful. You know, all those CRM ones, the ones we know and love from the good old Dynamics CRM days, like sales, customer service and field service and the rest. Why? Because like jumping out of a moving aircraft and free falling fast, it's easy to get caught up in all the excitement and fun of building all these apps, agents, flows, and dashboards. But sooner or later, it's inevitable. You are going to have to deploy, and deployment can be a high stress situation. So we want to do it in as much as a controlled and safe manner as possible. And solutions offer us the means to do that. Solutions in the Microsoft Power Platform reside within your Dataverse environment, your database. They act as containers that we can put components into, the components that we build and the components that we modify, customize even. And components such as tables, forms, charts, apps, and cloud flows, even components that contain custom code such as web resources and plugin assemblies, they can all be added into solutions. In fact, there's a heck of a lot more components that we can add to solutions, and these containers called solutions. And as Microsoft make components more and more components solution aware, this list gets bigger and bigger. It keeps growing. So, what is the point in putting these components into containers? Well, it is good to group functionality together, but also it gives us a way of identifying who was responsible for creating or modifying the component. And it does this through the publisher record. It's an association to a record called a publisher. And they also act as a way of transporting components, customizations between Dataverse environments. Because once we build it, we want to make it live. We want to publish it to another database. And we do this by exporting the solution, saving it somewhere as a zip file, and then it contains all those components. We then import it into another environment. And there's a few different ways of importing the solution. Two of the main ways are through an unmanaged solution or a managed solution. And this is a topic that we'll explore in a lot more detail as we progress through this series. But first, let's start at the very beginning. We're going to create an unmanaged solution. We'll create a publisher, create the solution, and add new components to it. And we'll add existing components, and we'll look at what happens, how our publisher record affects the components that we add and create. Let's start by getting into make.powerapps.com. And the first thing that we do, is the first thing that we should always do, is make sure that we're in the right environment. I'm going to be doing this demo in my development environment, an environment called Development A, because that's where you should start your build, in an environment specifically set aside for development. Next, you'll see the Solutions area in the left-hand navigation. Let's click on that, and then you'll be presented with a view of all the solutions that are installed in your Dataverse environment. Now, just that this list may be quite large, especially particularly if you're using a Dynamics 365 environment or trial. You'll have all those enterprise first-party app solutions in there because Microsoft use solutions as well to deliver their functionality. Now we get started by clicking the New Solution button. And we're not going to give our solution or anything a name right now. What we're going to do now is create a publisher because the solution needs a publisher. We have a few default publishers available in there, but we want to make this solution, this container of functionality, our own. So before we put a display name for our solution, let's just click New Publisher and create our publisher record. Here we can add some details, including the display name and name. I always keep the name as one string of text. I'm not sure if that's enforced or anything anymore. Can't remember. You can add a description of your publisher, and this is really important, this bit here, this prefix and the choice value prefix. If you look at this part here where it says preview of new object name, that says ff365 underscore object, and that's because I've chosen ff365 as my prefix. So any component that I create, whether it's a column, a table, or an app, that'll contain that prefix, and that just stamps that component as belonging to me, that publisher, or your organization. And the choice prefix is a prefix that'll be prefixed to any value in the choices field. And I'll show you and explain that a bit later. But what you really want to do is make these unique, or as unique as they can be, to your organization or to you. If we click the contact tab, we can add things like the address. If this is a solution that you're going to be building for commercial use. For this demo, I'm not going to bother with that, so I'm just going to click the save button. And now I can select my publisher from the publisher dropdown. I'll select Freefall 365 and I'll give my solution a display name. This could be anything as long as it really describes the functionality that you're going to contain in your solution. And you'll notice that the name field's pre-populated. We'll just skip these other details just now and click the Create button. And that's us created our solution. It's available within the list, but it's empty. Our container doesn't contain any components. And if we click on that, we can have a look at what's in there. And it tells us no components found. If we click New here, it gives us a list of all the different types of components that we can add to our solution. And this list seems to be getting bigger and bigger. So Microsoft are making more and more component solution aware. What we'll do in this case, we'll just create a basic model-driven, a very simple model-driven app. And again, remember, we're creating it from within the context of our solution. So let me go ahead and do that. So here's our app. We'll save and publish that. Very basic app, just containing accounts and contacts. And it's using the snazzy new app designer interface. And look what's happened here. It's added not just a model-driven app for us, it's also added the sitemap because the model-driven app is dependent on the sitemap. Now you'll notice that with solutions, when you add components, it'll sometimes pull through dependent components through to the solution, just to save you doing that yourself. In this case, it's only added the model-driven app and the sitemap because that's all we've customized, that's all we've created. And check this out, it's got our prefix before the sitemap and the app. So before the components, we've got our FF365 prefix. That stamps that component as belonging to us. We've created that component, it's ours. So that's how we add new components. Let's add some existing components. Let's add some tables in here. So click Add Existing. We'll choose Table. And we'll add the contact because we're going to make some changes to the contact table. Now, if you click Select Components here, this allows us to add components to our solution. I'm going to add some children fields here. So has children, number of children, because those components, they're important to our app. And you know what? We'll add the form in too. Why not? Now we can see our existing component in our solution again. So we've added more components to a container. Look at the contact record, it doesn't contain the prefix because that's not our entity. We can pull things in that aren't ours as well into our unmanaged solutions. Let's drill down and we can see those columns and the form that we added to our contact entity. So these are called subcomponents. And to demonstrate the choices prefix, what I'll do, I'll just go ahead and edit the option set has children here. So I'll amend the default value that was already in there. And then I'll add 2 more values. Now to demonstrate what effect that has on that choices field or option set field, let's switch to classic view. Unfortunately I have to do that just now. Hopefully we'll be able to get to see this information that come through to the modern interface at a later date. But for now, switch to classic view and let's just select that option set or choices field. If I look down here at the actual values in here, our custom values, no, has our choices prefix on it. So the underlying value has the choices prefix we chose earlier. And again, that helps us identify that we, Freefall365, created that option set. If it's out of the box, it'll have a different prefix, or no prefix in this case. If it's someone else's solution, it'll have their prefix. So the goal of this episode was really just to highlight some of the benefits of using solutions. I want to introduce you to solutions and show you how easy they are to get started using, because solutions can be scary. You just hear all these phrases thrown at you like managed, unmanaged, what one do I use? So many decisions. Just get using them. Create an unmanaged solution in your development environment and use it. So what did we learn? We learned that solutions are containers. They're containers that we put components into. We learned that we can identify who customized and created those components through the publisher record that's associated to the solution. We also looked at how those prefixes affect the components that we add and customize, and how it's worth considering carefully how we choose those prefixes. We created an unmanaged solution. That's the only solution that we're going to create in a development environment. That's the only solution that we're allowed to create from scratch. And then we added components to that solution. So what's next? Next, we're going to look at transporting that unmanaged solution that we created between environments. We're going to take our managed solution, we're going to export it, we'll save it, we will import it into another development environment, and then we will delete it and see what happens when we delete it. Who knows? Until then, please do get in touch. If you have any questions, I'm on the usual social networks, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm also on Instagram if you want to check that out, but I didn't add it to this list. And you can email me. If any questions at all, email me, paddy.burn@freefall365.com. But most importantly, if you like this video or you like any of the other videos in the series, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe on YouTube and you'll be the first to know about new videos that I release. Until then, safe deployments.